Chapter 251, Little Puppet I. After dealing with Kong, I wandered for a few more minutes. By the time I returned, the camp was already set up. And it looked surprisingly good. They'd dug a shallow pit in the center and connected it to a smaller hole beside it. A campfire was burning quietly inside that pit. If I remembered correctly, this design was called a Dakota fire hole. Since the fire was built below ground level, it was harder to spot from a distance. It also gave off far less smoke than a normal campfire, further minimizing visibility. Someone here clearly knew what they were doing. It was probably Ray. As for the tents, they weren't really tents at all. Not in the proper sense. The heroes had strung up tarps and cord to create 2 quick lean-tos, but the rest was improvised. Giant leaves had been layered together like shingles, woven into branches and lashed together with vines until they formed crude shelters that looked more like oversized bird nests than anything made by humans. It was messy and uneven, but functional. The ground was covered in moss here, like everywhere else in this jungle, springy to walk on, but damp enough to chill your bones if you tried to sleep on it. To counter that, they'd cut down smaller branches, lay them in cross patterns, and pile broad leaves over top until they had something resembling dry bedding. Crude mattresses, basically. Again, someone definitely knew their survival tricks. Probably Ray. And speaking of Ray, he was sitting by the fire pit, boiling water in a canteen cup propped over the flames. From the looks of it, he was brewing herbal tea out of whatever weeds he'd foraged earlier. Because of course he was. What reason was there to not treat this nightmarish jungle like a weekend picnic? It's not like our lives were in danger or anything. The faint hiss of steam rose as the water bubbled, while Ray excitedly chatted with Vince about some nonsense with a stupid grin on his face. Vince, on the other hand, appeared somewhere between bored and mildly amused, like a cat forced to watch someone dangle yarn. A little farther off, right at the edge of camp, Juliana was slouched lazily on a fallen log that served as a makeshift bench. She wore my retailored leather pants and tank top, my jacket draped loosely across her shoulders. And I was annoyed. Damn it, I muttered. Here I was, exhausted and dirty from running around and fighting monsters all day, while she looked like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine for feral supermodels. No, really, how dare she look better than me in my own clothes? Where was her humility as a loyal shadow? She was even polishing her nails with a kunai. A kunai, who the fuck is that? Anyhow, while she was still in the middle of her manicure session, Lily strolled over and held out 2 tiny vials that, to me, looked like healing potions. Right, Juliana still had that gash in her calf, which was why she couldn't run earlier. But instead of accepting them with a, thanks, like a normal person, Juliana raised an eyebrow and tilted her head. A few seconds passed in utter silence. Lily shifted uncomfortably. Juliana just kept staring. She wasn't even blinking anymore. Even I was starting to get creeped out. At last, Lily cautiously inched forward like she was approaching some wild animal, gently placed the vials down beside Juliana, and then bolted. Juliana, meanwhile, now started staring at the healing potions with no intention of picking them up, when Ray came up to her next. He offered her a steaming cup of his tea. Juliana waited a beat, grabbed the cup, then promptly dumped the tea out at his feet and held the empty cup between her palms to warm her hands. Wow, she could really be a jerk sometimes. But Ray wasn't deterred. With that same idiot grin plastered on his face, he walked off and began handing tea to the others. I gazed around and saw Alexia still asleep inside one of the lean-tos. Kong sat beside her, glaring daggers at me. He seemed like he was one provocation away from triggering his partial werewolf transformation and tearing into me if I so much as breathed too close to Alexia. I rolled my eyes. Honestly, he was so dramatic. Shaking my head, I decided against sleeping in those lean-tos. No way I'd get any decent rest with Kong practically stalking my every movement. So I turned away and headed toward the far edge of the camp. That's when Michael bumped into me. He was returning from somewhere deeper in the woods, nonchalantly dragging behind him the grotesque carcass of a tentacled millipede as if he'd just gone grocery shopping. I'm not exaggerating. It was an actual millipede, only with slimy tentacles sprouting out of its large segmented body. Did he hunt that thing for dinner? My stomach gave a violent twist. Oh, hell no, I'd sooner starve to death than eat something that repulsive. Hey, Samael, Michael greeted casually. You're just in time, we were about to talk strategy. I waved him off. I'm sleepy. Michael blinked as I brushed past him, then pointed at the tentacled millipede. But what about dinner? I scowled. I'm not eating that. He frowned. Okay, but the tents are over there. I glanced back at him over my shoulder. What do you take me for, a peasant? I'll sleep in a proper bed. Wake me when it's time to move. Without another word, I activated my origin card. 4 earthen walls with slanted roofs surged up from the ground, closing me in. A solid mud bed rose before me, cushioned with soft moss. I pulled a few clothes from my robe's dimensional storage pocket and laid them across the moss's bedsheets, so I wouldn't soil myself on it directly. Then I sank onto the bed with a satisfied sigh. There, cozy, clean, and dignified. The rest of them could roll around on damp leaves like woodland vermin for all I cared. I was going to sleep like a king. From outside, I heard Ray's exasperated groan. If he could do all that in the blink of an eye, then why did I set up camp all by myself? Michael only sighed and went to prepare dinner. Chapter 252, Little Puppet 2. Ever since the last time I saw Asmodeus in my dream, or rather, the last time I somehow ventured into his dream, I had been wary of falling asleep. What if I saw him again? What would I do then? What if next time he found a way to actually harm me? But in the end, I told myself I was overthinking it. Whatever strange phenomenon had pulled me into his dream was most likely a one-time occurrence. I highly doubted it would ever happen again. Well, so much for that. I facepalmed, because as soon as I shut my eyes and drifted off, I found myself inside a dream. A dream where I was standing under a starless night sky. The sky itself was fractured, broken like a sheet of shattered glass. In the center of those cracks hung a red moon. Now, when I say red moon, I don't mean the soft red of dawn or dusk. No, this was the kind of red that seemed downright unsettling. Rivers of crimson light leaked from that moon and poured down in endless streams, like it was a bleeding wound that would never heal. For reasons I couldn't explain, an overwhelming feeling of sorrow washed over me just from looking at that scenery. And kneeling on the ground beneath that fractured sky was a man. He was weeping as though his world had been torn away. The moon's crimson light cascaded over his body like a waterfall of blood. His shoulders shook uncontrollably as he screamed and cursed at the heavens above. But he never stopped crying. Tears ran down his face without end, pooling beneath him in a shimmering puddle of silver. I don't know how long he wept. It could have been weeks. It could have been months. Eventually, however, his screams died down. His shoulders grew still, and though his tears did not cease flowing, he remained quietly on his knees. Then, after a long, long time, he began to sing. And the sky forgot to turn to blue. From the day I lost you to. Every breath just pulls me through. To a life that isn't whole tilde. His voice was beautiful. So beautiful it was almost heartbreaking to hear. Deep and rich and resonant, every aching note that left his lips carried grief too profound to contain. I still dream of your gentle voice. But the stars never gave me a choice. You left with all your tender noise. To somewhere I can't hold tilde. I was entranced. I was mesmerized. That song carried such unbearable pain that my chest tightened with every word. I couldn't even begin to imagine what this man must have lost, what kind of misery, what depth of anguish could shape a voice into something so hauntingly wistful. I felt like I was about to cry myself, when the singing stopped. Slowly, the man turned toward me. And I froze where I stood. He was as pale as snow, with long black hair curling loosely around a pair of curved horns that jutted from the sides of his skull. Though he had been crying for a very long time, his crimson eyes had not dulled at all. If anything, they burned brighter, glowing like smoldering coals that refused to be snuffed out. For a moment, he regarded me in absolute silence. Then a smile far too friendly for my liking stretched across his face, as if he had been waiting for me. I recognized him without any introduction. This man was Asmodeus himself. The Prince of Desires. And somehow, I had entered his dream again. Ah, fuck me, I spat. Asmodeus, on the other hand, jumped to his feet and waved at me cheerfully, like I was some old drinking buddy he'd just bumped into. I groaned and prepared myself to run as far away from him as humanly possible. But the moment I turned around, he was already standing right in front of me. Wah, I blurted in surprise. The Prince of Desires placed a hand on my shoulder. Hey there, little puppet. I was beginning to wonder when I'd see you again after our last date. I would have been so upset if you'd ghosted me. I shoved his hand away. First of all, please don't touch me. Second of all, date. That wasn't a date. Last time I saw you, you played piano and tried to scare me. Asmodeus gasped dramatically, clutching his chest like I'd stabbed him. Tried to scare you, little puppet. Do you have any idea how many kings and queens of old have waged wars just to hear my music? I rolled my eyes. Yeah, well, I'm not exactly a medieval monarch desperate for a lullaby. The seventh demon prince merely shrugged off my jab. Anyway, shall we resume our second date? I said this is not a date. I snapped. I don't even want to be here. Asmodeus nodded solemnly. You're right. This is not a date. This is. He snapped his fingers. And suddenly, I was sitting in a dazzling restaurant with velvet carpets underfoot, crystal chandeliers overhead, violins humming in the corner, and waiters gliding about in sharp tuxedos like they'd been trained since birth in elegant etiquette. There were even other patrons here, couples murmuring softly over candlelit tables, nobles draped in silk and jewels, and a group of businessmen laughing far too loudly while holding champagne flutes. My jaw practically dropped to the floor. I looked down to find myself wearing an expensive red and black three-piece suit. In my hand was a glass of wine, and across from me sat a woman of unearthly beauty. She had long black hair, crimson eyes, and a pair of curved horns. In a low-cut backless velvet dress that did nothing to hide her voluptuous curves, she swirled her wine glass and smiled at me with predatory sweetness. I blinked, disoriented in more ways than one. What the fuck? Like this form? She purred, sounding overly seductive. You must already know I'm a genderless being. I shift into any shape I desire. So I assumed you'd prefer a sexy woman over a handsome dude. Her voice was like honey, low and velvety and laced with mockery as much as allure. I nearly choked on the wine that I hadn't even sipped. Actually, I'd prefer if you could just let me go. Asmodeus leaned forward with feline grace, delicately resting her chin on her knuckles. Oh, come now, little puppet. The night's just getting interesting. And besides, her eyes glinted wickedly, you're the one who rudely barged into my dream. Again, I almost threw my hands up. Believe me, I have no idea why this has happened twice. I want nothing to do with you. And just why are you calling me, little puppet? Asmodeus's smile faltered for a heartbeat. She studied me wordlessly, her expression somewhere between amusement and genuine confusion. I didn't like that look. Finally, she snapped her fingers again. The restaurant melted away. Now I was sitting on the balcony of an ancient castle, overlooking lush mountains. A small coffee table stood between us, set neatly with tea and cakes. Opposite me, Asmodeus had returned to his male form and was lounging like a king at leisure. You really don't know? He asked with a sly smirk, gesturing toward my right arm. It was only then that I noticed my three-piece suit had been replaced with a plain black sleeveless vest. I glanced down and saw he was pointing to the tribal tattoo on my right forearm. It looked as ordinary as ever, if a little edgy, an intricate pattern of what seemed to be occult runes from some dead language. Quote. What about it? I asked, sounding a bit more dreadful than I'd cared to admit. I noticed it the last time we met, Asmodeus said. But I didn't bring it up because I assumed you already knew. You see, I call you little puppet because that's exactly what you are. You are marked by death. Chapter 253, Little Puppet 3. Marked by death, I echoed. Asmodeus nodded so casually that if anyone else was present here, they might have thought we were discussing the weather. Well, to be more precise, that's the mark of the Mother of Mercy, he clarified, which didn't clarify anything. Mother of Mercy. I blinked, unsure what to make of it. As in the goddess, she's actually real. The spirit realm, aside from being strange and hostile, was a patchwork of itself and countless other worlds the Spirit King had conquered and absorbed into his domain. That was why each region had its own laws, environment, and even flow of time, because they were, at their core, different worlds. Many of the spirit beasts we encountered in this realm were once the inhabitants of those worlds. Inhabitants with their own histories and cultures spanning back hundreds of thousands of years. Explorers and scholars did their best to catalog the fragments of these fallen worlds, but it was like trying to map the ocean with a teaspoon. Every discovery raised 10 more questions. To make things more complicated, most of the regions in the spirit realm were in ruins. So the majority of knowledge was either lost forever or scattered in scraps. Among those many unsolved questions were the gods. In this day and age, the existence of gods has been confirmed. During the early years of Spirit Realm's exploration, humanity unearthed undeniable proof of gods, like legendary artifacts, ancient ruins, and remnants of their divine rule. But the gods themselves, that was the mystery. No one had ever seen one in the flesh. Not in the spirit realm, not in the human world, not anywhere. Some presumed they were all dead. Others believed they still lived. Most simply didn't care, but no one knew what had happened to them, or where they had gone. Regardless, the gods had been real. Those mythical beings of unfathomable power were real. And a select few were theorized to be more real than the rest. Why? Because traces of certain gods had been unearthed across multiple regions, meaning countless fallen worlds, worlds that had nothing to do with one another, once worshipped them. Which meant these gods weren't mere local deities bound to a single culture, but figures recognized by civilizations light years apart or entire dimensions away. So either it was one big coincidence, or these gods had truly existed. Thus, they were called the universal gods. And one of them was the Mother of Mercy. Unlike other deities, her traces weren't confined to a single form. Sometimes she appeared as a veiled woman with a chalice of light. Sometimes as a crowned skeleton whose arms spread wide in mock embrace. Other times, as nothing more than a faceless figure carved into temple walls with her head bowed in eternal mourning. The only constant between these depictions was death. Not war, not disease, not cruelty, just death. Plain and simple. Her name surfaced in far too many ruins to count, in murals, in chants, in the faintest fragments of myth. Different cultures, different worlds, all had feared her, all had revered her. Her faith was introduced into our world by some fanatical explorers a couple of centuries ago. And though humanity doesn't worship the old gods much anymore, having their own gods now, the monarchs, her faith still endured. Her churches still existed, her prayers were still sung. I knew all this because my own mother had been one of her believers. And now I was being told I was marked by her. Like, what the fuck was that even supposed to mean? Yes, as in the goddess, Asmodeus chuckled like he was explaining something simple to a dim-witted child. As in the first primordial. As in the mistress of the oldest death. As in the bringer of true end. And yes, she is very real. I opened and closed my mouth several times, trying to form a sentence but failing to find the right words. Cut me some slack, okay. It's not every day you enter a demon's dream and he tells you that you're marked by death herself. At last, I looked down at my tattoo and stammered, I thought this was a warlock mark or something. Oh, you know about the warlocks. That makes this easier to explain. Asmodeus clapped his hands. You're not wrong, it is similar to a warlock mark. But while warlocks draw their power from the entities they contract with, you draw, or can draw, your power from a god. Which makes you a shade. A shade? I asked. Yes, Asmodeus replied far too cheerfully, clearly enjoying my confusion. One touched by divinity, one marked, claimed, and bound to the service of a god. You carry her shadow with you now, hence, shade. I waited a few seconds, then pinched the bridge of my nose. This doesn't make any sense. I'm not even her follower. And I don't even remember, I got this tattoo in an ink parlor. An ink parlor. Asmodeus half-lidded his eyes like I had made a particularly bad joke. Ah, yes, of course. A mortal ink parlor etched the mark of a universal god onto your flesh. Very plausible. I'm serious. I snapped. I was drunk, I was stupid, and I thought the design looked cool. That's it. There was no ritual, no chanting, no blood sacrifice, or whatever it takes to summon a god. There was just me and some shady back alley artist. He rolled his eyes. Then the chances are that the mark manifested after you got that tattoo. You just didn't notice the design slowly changing until it became something else entirely. I gawked at the demon in front of me. Was he serious? You're telling me I wouldn't notice my own skin changing? I shot back. He shrugged. You told me yourself, you were drunk. Okay, fine, that was a fair point. But, could I even be marked without consent? I knew how stupid that question sounded, but I had to ask. Asmodeus touched his chin thoughtfully. Actually, no, you had to have made a pact with her. Exactly, I exclaimed, leaning forward. I don't remember doing that. And I definitely would have remembered meeting an eldritch goddess, no matter how drunk I was. Asmodeus sighed. That, I don't know. But be that as it may, the truth remains unchanged, she has chosen you as her champion. Her herald, her shade. I grabbed my head and laughed shakily, almost hysterically. I'm not a champion material. I don't even go to her church. My mother used to drag me when I was little, sure, but I stopped believing years ago. Asmodeus gave me a long look. Then he laughed. You're so adorable. Shut up. I barked in irritation, my temper spiking. And why the hell am I even seeing you anyway? You said I entered your dream, how? The Prince of Desires purred and rested his chin on the back of his hand. Aren't you full of questions today? Tell you what, I'll answer everything you want if you speak my name. Not happening, I shot back instantly. Ah, shucks. Asmodeus pouted in mock disappointment, though his delighted smile only widened. You wound me, little puppet. Do you have any idea how many mortals would kill just for the chance to whisper my name, let alone bargain with me? Yeah, well, I'm not one of them. I folded my arms. The thing about demons was that speaking their true name aloud gave them power over you. Once you called them, they would take it as an invitation and come. Now, demon princes like Zaldrith and Asmodeus were both dead, sort of. But their souls were still very much alive. So if I uttered their name, they would become visible to me. And once I could see them, they could find all sorts of ways to harm me. For example, Asmodeus could bend me with a single command, turn me into a puppet under his gaze. That was why I'd been so petrified the first time I saw him in that dream. I thought he could already influence me. Fortunately, that was not the case. When he asked me to speak his name, I realized he still had no hold over me. I didn't know if saying his name in a dream would count as inviting him, but I wasn't about to risk it. It didn't hurt to try, Asmodeus said with a careless shrug. Very well, how about we play a game then? I'll answer 2 of your questions, and in return, you'll answer 1 of mine. I squinted. That actually sounds fair. Of course it does. Fairness is the bedrock of all good bargains, he said smoothly. Now, since I've already explained your mark, you have 1 question left. Ask wisely. This bastard. I resisted the urge to snort. Fairness, my ass. Fine, I said. Tell me why I'm seeing you. What's causing this? Asmodeus leaned back in his chair and picked a cake from the coffee table. Honestly, I've been wondering the same thing since our last meeting, so I looked into it. Dug a little deeper, he drawled, taking a slow bite. And, to even my own surprise, I discovered, our fates are linked. Quote. What? I scowled. Asmodeus licked frosting from his finger as if he hadn't just dropped a thunderbolt on me. Then he snapped his fingers. And the scenery changed once again. This time I found myself standing in absolute darkness, illuminated only by a single glowing thread stretching out of my chest. I followed the glowing thread with my gaze until I saw it entwined with another thread, this one a bit darker. The 2 cords were knotted together. I took a step back as Asmodeus appeared at the other end of the second cord. His crimson eyes gleamed as the threads, glow reflected in their depths. Chapter 254. Little Puppet IV. What the hell? I muttered, my eyes widening as I stared at the Prince of Desires in disbelief. This is the loom of fate. How can you even perceive it? Asmodeus tilted his head, his smirk caught somewhere between entertained and intrigued. You are such a fascinating little creature, you know that. He drawled, studying me like I was just a peculiar insect he had caught. You have no knowledge of your own mark, you have no understanding of the gods, you are blind to the truth of this world, yet somehow, you know about the loom of fate. My throat went dry. Of course I knew about it. The loom of fate was a web of ethereal threads stretching across existence, binding every life, every death, every choice into a grand tapestry from which no one could escape. Or so Lily claimed in the game. She had been the first main character to be able to perceive fate by borrowing the gaze of a goddess. It was no small feat. Because mortals weren't meant to even comprehend fate's existence, let alone its workings. But she had actually seen fate. And that same feat was later followed by Michael at the very end of the game, when he found a way to trap the Spirit King with himself in the void. Aside from Lily and Michael, only 2 other characters ever glimpsed fate in the story's entirety. The first was one of the nameless Lord of the Syndicate, a powerful oracle who had the ability to twist probability itself. The second was the 8th demon prince, Vagar the Moon Eater. But Asmodeus, he was not supposed to be one of them. Impossible, I whispered, though the word sounded hollow even to my own ears. Your domain is desire, not fate. And yet, here he was, perceiving the loom. And it was definitely the loom. I was certain, although there were only 2 threads here, one mine and one his, both twisted together in a knot. But if he could see this much, then he could damn well see the rest of fate too. Asmodeus chuckled like I had said something both dumb and funny. You're right, I possess no authority over fate. Not as my brother Vagar does. But I've learned a few tricks from him. In fact, we all learn from one another. Desire, wrath, rot, fate, we're not bound solely by our domains. We study, we steal, we take what we want. My heartbeat thundered in my chest like a war drum. That's not possible. The Moon Eater's dominion is absolute. His was a power stolen from the gods themselves. You can't just. Oh, please. Asmodeus cut me off with a lazy wave of his hand, as though brushing away a tedious lecture. Do you think Vhagar kept his secrets locked away or something? Do you think the princes play fair with one another? If someone has something worth taking, we take it. If they hoard knowledge, we pry it from their dead fingers, or their living minds. He leaned closer. I'll let you in on a secret. Desire and fate aren't so different. Desire creates fate. Every thread is spun from a want. A yearning. A man's path wins because he chases. A woman's end comes because she covets. His voice dropped lower. And I'll tell you another secret. That's how the Spirit King creates us, his children, his generals, his demons. Each one of us is forged stronger than the last. Every new prince is a refinement. Every one of us is a more perfected version of the one who came before. I knew what he meant, though I had never given it much thought until now. Asmodeus continued, sounding almost conspiratorial, the Spirit King does not repeat, you see. He corrects. His first prince was little more than a beast, driven by instinct and nothing more. The second had cunning, but no will. The third had will, but no subtlety. And so it went, mistake after mistake, each flaw corrected in the next creation. That is why our powers are not only correlated, they are improvements. Quote. Improvements toward what? I asked hesitantly, because this was a chain. If every demon prince's power was an improvement over that of their predecessor, then where was this leading? What was the Spirit King's end goal? I had a guess. And I didn't like it. Toward what our king truly desires, he whispered with a grin that chilled me. I swallowed hard. The Queen of Black Rot. Asmodeus. Smirk widened instantly at my response. Exactly, little puppet. Exactly. Wait, then does that mean the sixth demon prince could? I didn't get to finish. Because Asmodeus blurred forward and pressed a lanky finger lightly against my lips to silence me. Your two questions are long since over, he said softly, but the sharpness in his tone was more threatening than he probably intended. I clenched my fists and instinctively stepped back. But he was already behind me. His hand fell onto my shoulder and his grin spread as if he was savoring the sight of my unease. You are entering my dreams because our fates are linked. That's the phenomenon pulling you to me. There's your answer, he murmured. Now, it is my turn to ask. He then raised a finger and pointed toward where his fate thread and mine were tangled in a knot. My question is simple. His voice slithered into my ear. Why are our fates linked? His breath ghosted across my skin, cold and chilling, yet it crawled like fire down my spine. And don't lie, he warned, this time sounding every bit as threatening as the monster he was. I hate liars. Even though I cannot harm you here, if I believe you've spoken falsehood, I will find a way to hurt you. And I will make you regret it. My mind raced in a desperate attempt to come up with an answer. Because I sure as hell couldn't just tell him the truth. I forced a deep breath to calm myself, which did nothing to calm me. My heart still thundered non-stop. My breath still came in ragged bursts. And I was one step away from a full-blown panic when an idea hit me. I couldn't tell him the truth. The full truth, at least. But maybe I could give him enough. Answer me, Asmodeus snarled, his tone not smooth as silk anymore but sharp like a blade pressed to my throat. My instincts screamed at me to speak before he lost his patience. So I did. I was the one originally meant to find your summoning card. And for a few moments that followed, there was nothing but silence. Then, after a while, Asmodeus stepped away and circled to stand in front of me. Excuse me, what? Gone was the menacing tone. Gone was the dreadful aura. Right now, he sounded more like a 5-year-old dumbfounded child who had just been asked to explain quantum mechanics. I shrugged helplessly. It wasn't Jake. I was the one fated to find your summoning card. I was the one fated to start the massacre at the Night Sanctuary. And I was the one fated to die at the end of it. The Prince of Desires simply kept staring. His crimson eyes, usually brimming with mischief, now looked uncertain. And then he exclaimed, huh. Wait, if that's true, then how do you even know this? Are you actually saying you changed fate somehow? I sighed, then locked gazes with him. Your one question is over. And for the first time since I had seen him, Asmodeus didn't have a retort ready. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like he couldn't decide if he wanted to scream or laugh or just tear me apart. But eventually, his grin returned. This time it wasn't smug. It was hungry. Oh, you are delightful. You're so very delightful, he purred, though the edges of his voice quivered with something darker. Do you realize what you've just confessed, little puppet? Because if you speak the truth, then you're not simply a mortal. You're a mistake. My stomach dropped. Asmodeus started stepping back into the darkness, slowly disappearing out of view. And the gods hate mistakes. The crimson glimmer of his eyes was the last fragments of him visible before he completely faded away. By now, only his voice carried, but me. Oh, I think I like you even more now. Which means you and I will be spending a great deal of time together. My breath quickened, cold sweat beaded across my forehead. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something dangerously close to fear for some unknown reason. Then, out of nowhere, something monstrous lunged at me from the dark. I flinched, and woke up screaming in the earthen bed I had made. Chapter 255, Sleeping Beauty. Samael, are you listening? Hey, are you ignoring me right as we walk? Hey, Samael, thack, ouch. I winced and turned as someone smacked the back of my head. It was Michael, still dressed in his academy combat uniform that had definitely seen better days. He was walking right behind me. Focus, he said warily. You're leading at the front. If anything attacks us, you'll be the first target. I frowned and looked around. We were walking on a thin ledge along the escarpment of a plateau. Like I mentioned at the start of this perilous event, Noctvale Wilds was a jungle divided into many tiers, like a stairway made for giants, or a wedding cake. Whichever analogy helps your imagination better. To get out of this place, we needed to brave thousands of miles of jungle, then climb down a steep cliff, then repeat the process several more times. And the lower we went from here, the thicker and more dangerous the jungle would become. Truly, this journey was going to be hellish. I sighed, using my innate power to strengthen and slightly extend the narrow platform under our feet. I didn't want to disarrange the structural integrity of this place too much for two reasons. First, I had no idea if anything was hiding inside the cliff wall. What if I disturbed something we couldn't fend off? By extension, I also didn't want to draw more attention to us than needed. We were in a vulnerable position here, after all, with barely any ground under us to fight properly if the need arose. Second, I didn't want to waste my essence on patchwork when I'd probably need it later for something much more important, like keeping us alive. The weathered stone creaked beneath us anyway. Each step felt like an invitation for gravity to test our survival skills. But I kept the ledge from crumbling, reinforcing it with just enough of my power to hold steady beneath our steps. Threads of stone knit themselves tighter, unseen to the naked eye, though I felt every grain shift under my will. It was like trying to hold a door shut against a storm, easily doable, but not something I wanted to keep up forever. But by the looks of things, I'd have to, because even if I created stair steps or, hell, a sliding platform that could take us down like an elevator from time to time, it would still take us at least 10 hours of climbing down. I scoffed. First target, Michael, if anything attacks us right now, all of us would be as good as dead. Don't lump me in with you lot, Ray chimed from somewhere behind in the line we were moving in, sounding annoyingly carefree. Because if this was a story, I'd be the hero. And everyone knows heroes don't die. Oh, you're mistaken, Ray. Heroes do die, I muttered without looking back. And if you were the hero, you'd end up as Monster Chow 5 chapters in and doom the rest of us. Ray gasped theatrically. Blasphemy. I'd at least make it to the end of Volume 1. Minimum. Michael rolled his eyes. You're both idiots. Just shut up and focus. If Samael slips, we're all going down. That shut Ray up for all of 3 seconds. Then he started yapping again. But I couldn't pay any attention to him. Because Michael was right. My focus was indeed stretched thin. How could it not? My mind kept circling back to that delightful little chat I'd had with Asmodeus just a few hours earlier in my dream. There were many things he said that stuck with me, but one in particular kept gnawing at my thoughts like a parasite. You're a mistake. And the gods hate mistakes. What did he even mean by that? Surely not. Now that I had survived past the point in the story I was supposed to die, the gods would come after me for defying my fate. That would be ridiculous. Right. I sighed and shook my head to chase away these useless thoughts. Whatever happens, I'll deal with it then, I told myself. What was the use of worrying about the future that hadn't even happened yet, right? But truthfully, I was worried. Because aside from everything else, there was one more thing Asmodeus revealed that troubled me. According to him, the Spirit King was creating his new demon princes by refining the powers of the old ones. He was improving them. Each demon prince was a stepping stone. A prototype to be perfected. A correction of what came before them. A better and stronger version of their predecessor. And if that was true, then what exactly was he refining them toward? I knew the answer. You see, in the game, a renowned diviner 200 years before the start of the main storyline prophesied the rise of a malevolent being who would herald the end of the world. A creature of decay and hunger, of corruption and darkness. The Queen of Black Rot. The diviner proclaimed she would be unstoppable. No king or man, no god or mortal, no weapon or power would be enough to stop her. Everything would crumble before her and succumb to her unyielding rot. At the time when this prophecy was made, it terrified a lot of people, even some high-ranking nobles. But after 200 years, fear had dulled into myth. The prophecy had become one of those stories you'd only ever see in conspiracy forums online that no one takes seriously. Even the great churches, back when they still held weight, declared the diviner's words exaggerated. They said the Queen of Black Rot was most likely a metaphor for sin, for moral decay. Not a real threat, but I knew better. Because in the game, she had been very real. And she was none other than Saint Inyasa. Oh, right, my bad. I haven't told you about Saint Inyasa yet. Okay, so basically, every few generations have those few awakened who are so boundlessly kind and righteous and just too damn good for this world. That people start calling them saints. You know the type, the ones who heal their enemies, hug orphans, and probably apologize if they accidentally step on a blade of grass. Saint Inyasa was one of those. She was a saint of my generation, loved, revered, and practically worshipped by the world. The kind of person singers would write songs about for decades to come, companies would beg to have as their ambassador, and peasants would name their kids after. She shone so bright that even we nobles, the supposed arrogant bastards, actually kind of respected her. But unbeknownst to the world and even Inyasa herself, she was being used by the syndicate to sow the seed of eternal blight. When the time came, they'd force her to make the seed sprout. That would result in the total corruption of the northern safe zone, and just like that, 25% of the world would fall. That was when they'd inject her with the Spirit King's drop of ichor, exposing her soul to his corruption. And that was how Saint Inyasa's soul would be defiled and she'd be rebuilt into the Spirit King's image, becoming the Queen of Black Rot. I remembered that scene vividly. Because in the game, it had been one of those gut-punch twists that nearly no one saw coming. It was the moment players sat back, stunned, as one of the story's best heroines they'd grown to love was twisted into an unstoppable villainess. But here, this wasn't a game. This was my life. And if Asmodeus was telling the truth, then everything was on track for that prophecy to come true. A bead of sweat trailed down the side of my face. Tisk. I clicked my tongue. No, you know what? Everything was fine. This changed nothing. Because from the moment I woke up in that hospital with memories of my past life, one of my goals had always been to stop the Queen of Rot's descent. And I would do that. I had to. I had to. Hey, Michael's voice cut into my spiraling thoughts. You're grinding your teeth. I unclenched my jaw, not realizing I'd been doing it. Quote. Ah, sorry. He frowned, looking like he was about to press further. I was already halfway through rolling my eyes and brushing him off when suddenly. Platch. Air. The sound of brittle stone giving way echoed, followed by a scream that could only belong to Vince, raw, panicked, and ridiculously high-pitched. Both Michael and I turned sharply and spotted him falling off the cliff, screaming like, well, exactly like how you'd expect a man falling off a cliff to scream. Chapter 256. Sleeping Beauty 2. A few minutes earlier, Vince cleverly was walking on a narrow ledge along the escarpment, arms stretched out like some drunk tightrope walker. Ahead of him walked Ray, Michael, and Samael. Behind him trailed Juliana, Lily, and Kong, who was hauling the still unconscious Alexia. Vince's impression of this ragtag caravan was complicated. He already knew Samael, so at least he knew what to expect there. Samael, according to him, was a narcissistic drama queen who was much smarter than he let on. Michael, on the other hand, seemed way too perfect in every way, except when it came to basic self-preservation. Just last night he'd gone out hunting alone to catch dinner. And while the food he brought back was disgusting, barely qualified as food at all, he hadn't asked for anything in return. So he was either a fool, or the kind of person even saints would look at and mutter, "Tone it down, man, you're making the rest of us look bad." And Ray was, well, Vince hadn't decided yet if he was comic relief goofball or an omen of disaster. Probably both. Definitely both. Lily, much like her boyfriend, also seemed too nice for this world. Which meant this world was probably planning to eat her alive. And if the situation were different, Vince would have done so himself. What? Taking advantage of nice people was his calling. Besides, he was doing them a favor by toughening them up for the cruel, cruel world. As for Kong, well, he barely talked, unless it was to sling curses so obscene they could make even a sailor blush. So he was a quiet guy with a bad temper, but obsessively devoted to his mistress. His mistress was Alexia von Zinks. Vince didn't know much about her aside from the obvious. She was blind, terrifyingly strong, and ranked among the top 10 cadets at the Apex like him. He'd seen her at the academy a few times, but never spoken to her, or to most nobles unless it was at a gambling table. Samael being the sole exception. But despite being a southerner, even he knew that the Zinks bloodline carried enough weight to buy them instant respect anywhere they went in the world. Sure, they were not as rich and strong as the Theospanes, and also not as old and established as the Valkyrians. But their status was nothing to scoff at. They were easily the third most influential family in the world, not counting the royals, obviously. However, what Vince couldn't wrap his head around was how someone blind could be so ferocious that people often forgot she couldn't even see them. He had witnessed her fight during the evaluation exam, and that was a sight he would never forget. She was definitely terrifying. But even more terrifying than her was Samael's shadow, Juliana Vox Blade. Vince had crossed paths with her once before, and he could say with confidence she was a certified lunatic. She struck him as the kind of woman who would watch you choke on food and, instead of helping, critique your table manners while you died. He was 90% sure she'd killed a man or two before. Not that Vince hadn't killed people himself. But still, he wanted to be as far away from her as possible. He sighed, wobbling slightly on the ledge. No, seriously, what the hell was he even doing here? Trapped in a nightmarish jungle, stuck between do-gooders, nobles, maniacs, and actual psychopaths. Careful, Ray warned from behind as Vince edged a little too close to the edge. Coming from him, it sounded like an insult. Vince glanced back, squinting as if he was personally offended. What do you mean, careful? I'm fine. Look, steady as a rock. He tapped his foot twice for emphasis. Thud, one particularly loose stone shifted under his boot. Oh shit, and just like that, Vince was gone. Floof. He pinwheeled off the ledge, arms flailing, screaming like a man with only seconds left to regret every life choice he'd ever made. Juliana, right behind him, didn't even flinch. She just tilted her head, met his eye mid-fall, and then looked away with the bored disinterest of a woman watching something unfold that was not her problem. Hey, Michael roared. Then, without hesitation, without thought, without even an ounce of common sense, he jumped after him. Yes, he jumped after him. Wait, what? Samael shouted, watching his reliable companion, the supposed hero who'd saved this world, the protagonist himself, swan dive straight into the chasm. Michael, you don't have wings, you fucking moron. Yeah, that was something Michael remembered only after jumping. And sure enough, now there were two idiots free-falling side by side instead of one. Vince was screaming, Michael was flailing to grab him, and together they spun mid-fall like a pair of human shish kebabs. Lily yelped, caught somewhere between utterly horrified and confused the fuck out of her mind. Oh my god, Ray breathed, clutching his head. It's contagious. Stupidity is airborne. Shut up. Samael barked, already slamming his palm against the cliff wall. His essence surged and forced matter itself to bend to his will. A massive flat platform jutted out from the rock face beneath the two falling idiots. THWOOM. They landed on the platform with a bone-rattling thud. Vince hit face first, Michael on top of him. The echo of impact rolled up the escarpment like thunder. Samael leaned over the ledge, glaring down. Would you two care to explain how all this escalated in under 10 fucking seconds? Vince let out a broken sob, muffled against the stone. I blame Ray. What? Ray shouted. You fell because you can't walk. Don't drag me into your gravity issues. Michael, sprawled across Vince like he was a mattress, simply gave a thumbs up. Meanwhile Juliana was casually inspecting her nails and whistling a tune, as if she hadn't just let her fellow cadet fall to his doom. The ledge groaned again under our boots as we climbed down to the stone slab where our two geniuses had crash-landed. Lily darted forward the second Michael stirred. Michael, are you all right? She crouched beside him, scrutinizing him for any injury. Michael sat up and rolled his shoulders. I'm fine. Meanwhile Vince was groaning into the platform, sounding suspiciously like he was crying. Up you come, champ, Ray said, hauling him up under the arm. My knee, Vince wailed, clutching his scraped leg. And my wrist is sprained. Damn it, this is why I hate nature. Yeah, too late for that, Ray quipped. Once the initial chaos settled, Michael finally turned, predictably and righteously, to Juliana. His voice hardened. You could have grabbed him. I saw you looking. You had enough time to react. Why didn't you? He could have died because of your inaction. Juliana raised an eyebrow. Her lips twitched into the faintest ghost of a smile. And I already knew exactly what was about to leave her mouth. Something along the lines of, taking care of a grown-ass man isn't my responsibility. So before she could drop that landmine and spark a fight, I cut in smoothly, stepping right between them. It was my fault. I was lost in thought and didn't reinforce the ledge properly. That's on me. Juliana's eyes narrowed slightly, caught off guard. And then Lily piped up too. No, it was my slip-up. I should have been using my foresight to look for danger, but I wasn't. I was trying to save Essence. Vince flapped a hand, swaying slightly on his feet. Guys, it's fine. I'm fine. No one's to blame. I should have been more careful. I'm just not good with, trekking, climbing, existing. Michael looked between us all, his frown softening into a reluctant sigh. Fine, but maybe we should take a short break. It's a long climb down. No point forcing it if we all aren't mentally ready. I nodded and pressed my palm to the wall. The rock parted under my will and a hollow cavern as big as a spacious room was carved out into the cliff face. One by one, everyone filed in. In passing, my gaze flicked to Juliana. It might have only been my imagination, but for the briefest moment, she looked unsettled. Like she hadn't expected the blame to be redirected so easily. She wasn't used to that. Of course she wasn't, but what she didn't know was that I'd already warned Lily before we started the climb. I told her Juliana was prickly and volatile, so if she looked ready to bite someone's head off, we'd need to defuse the situation before it got messy. I sighed. This was going to be a very long journey. Once everyone was inside and settling down, I finally turned to Michael, who was stretching his shoulders like nothing had happened. I blinked at him. So, quick question. He glanced over. Why the fuck did you jump? What was the big idea? Michael froze mid-stretch. I was trying to save him. How? By increasing the number of falling idiots from 1 to 2. I snapped. Ray choked on laughter from the corner. He's right. You just doubled the problem. Vince, still rubbing his knee, raised a hand. He didn't even save me. If anything, he used me to cushion his fall. Michael muttered, I was going to use my spiderweb card. Lily whined from somewhere inside. Oh God, not the spiderweb card. You still have that. I begged you to get rid of it. Michael threw his arms up. I can't waste a card, Lily. I'm not rich like you. I arched a brow. The what card? What are you guys talking about? He looked at me, unblinking. You don't remember. I scowled. Remember what? He studied me for a moment, then shook his head and walked into the cavern. Never mind then. Chapter 257, Sleeping Beauty 3. The cavern I carved into the cliffside wasn't cozy, but it was safe enough to let everyone relax for the first time in hours. The group had spread out, Lily fussing over Michael's scratches, Ray fiddling with his drone, Vince sulking on the floor, Kong sitting cross-legged at Alexia's side like a guard dog, and Juliana perched on a boulder at the far end, chin in palm, staring out at the misty jungle below. The air was filled with the sound of people talking over one another, overlapping banters that drifted between subjects without landing anywhere in particular. Michael, as always, tried to steer the conversation into something sensible. So, he said, leaning back on his hands, I couldn't help but notice, you two, he pointed between Ray and Vince, act like you've known Samael for a while. Did you all know each other back at the academy? I tilted my head. I met Ray at the gym near my dorm. Oh, so he's like your workout partner? Michael asked. More like background noise of learn to tune out, I corrected. Excuse me, Ray gasped, clutching his chest like I'd stabbed him straight through the heart. That's all I was to you. After everything, I gave him the side eye. Everything. Ray leapt to his feet, dramatic as a stage actor. Tell them how you bribed me to give up my spot on Squad 9 during the team test. How you begged me to be your best friend afterwards. Begged, because I was so dashingly cool. And I, in my infinite mercy, took pity and granted you the title of BFF. Silence. Absolute silence blanketed the cavern. Everyone stared at Ray. Even Juliana turned her head a fraction. Ray flung out his arms, indignant. What? It's all totally true. Michael's lips twitched. Then he turned to me, smug as a cat. Authenticity of that story aside. I knew it. I knew you pulled strings to get into our squad. Yes, Michael, I praise your stunning deduction. I rolled my eyes. Moving on. I met Vince when I needed someone to launder our essence stones. Michael choked so hard he actually slapped his chest. His wide eyes snapped to Vince. Vince shot to his feet, hands raised high like a thief caught in a spotlight. Wait. Allegedly, okay, allegedly. There's no proof I ever did that. He jabbed a finger at me. And why in the name of monarchs would you tell anyone that? You know we could face charges for larceny and fraud, right? Quote. Fraud. Lily frowned, rubbing her chin. Oh, I just remembered. There was this rumor in my dorm that one of the top 10 first years was running an illegal gambling ring. All eyes slowly swiveled to Vince. He froze, gulped, and started sweating like a faucet. After a long pause, he croaked. Define. Illegal. Ray's eyes sparkled. Oh, my viewers are gonna love this when the vlog goes live. Vince's head whipped toward him. Quote. Viewers. Only then did he notice the red dot blinking on Ray's drone. His soul practically left his body. You've been recording this whole time. Of course. Ray beamed. Do you know how many clicks a video titled, Apex's top cadet confesses to money laundering and gambling while dangling off a cliff, will get? Vince staggered back, gripping his hair. Oh no. I was openly smirking now, lounging like a king watching peasants trip over themselves for my amusement. Relax, Vince. At least you'll be famous. Ray's channel has quite a following. Yeah, Ray chimed. Don't worry, I'll tag you in the vlog. Tag me. Vince howled. I'll sue you for slander. Ray blinked innocently. How can it be slander if you said it yourself? Allegedly. Vince screamed. It's all alleged. I didn't admit to anything. Michael rubbed his temples like he was reconsidering the very meaning of existence itself. Kong still hadn't said a word. He just sat at Alexia's side, staring blankly at the opposite wall as if nothing on this earth could possibly concern him. No really, if the world was burning, he'd probably look the same. I could never tell what was going on inside that head of his. I doubted he was a threat, but still, I decided to never drop my guard around him. He had confronted me once, and it hadn't ended well for him. Who knew what he would try next? Because even I had to admit, he was very smart. A simp, sure, but very smart. Juliana, of course, didn't bother engaging with us mere mortals. She sat on her rock, looking out over the jungle. Her white hair caught the faint hue of the haunting red moonlight, her azure eyes cold and deep as a frozen ocean. She looked so effortlessly picturesque that it irritated me. I refused to believe she wasn't posing so soulfully on purpose. In the background, Vince had started lunging at Ray to grab his drone and erase the incriminating evidence of his innocence. Michael was caught in the middle, trying to mediate. And that was when I realized, their group had begun forming in earnest. The main characters were all here now. From this point on, their bond would only grow. And for some reason, I suddenly felt so out of place. It was probably because I knew, deep down, that I didn't belong with them. But it was also more than that. The truth was, I'd never belonged anywhere. Yes, I'd had friends before. But not real friends. Just people to drink with, party with, plot with. People who were temporary and replaceable. Most sucked up to me because of my status or wealth, and I let them. I let them call me their friend, while knowing full well there was a hierarchy. And I liked it that way because it gave me a sense of superiority over them. And that wasn't friendship. They never truly saw me. And I never truly let them. That's the difference between belonging and just existing in someone else's orbit. One is a home, the other is a waiting room. And because I knew how intimately close these main characters would grow, how meaningful their friendship would become. I guess I felt jealous. Because I wanted that too. No matter how tough an exterior I put on, I also wanted people I could share everything with. People I could be vulnerable around. Not pawns. Not sycophants. Not transactional ties. I wanted genuine relationships. But I knew better than to dream. I wasn't delusional. I knew what kind of person I was. Men like me, men who are ready to sacrifice everything for their objectives, men who wear masks because showing their true selves would be a liability. Don't get to form genuine relationships. We get alliances and deals and bargains. We get people who tolerate us until they see what we truly are, and then they leave. Or worse, stay long enough to use us in return. Whatever, I sighed to myself, tilting my head back, trying to pose as soulfully as Juliana without looking like I was actually trying to. The noise around me was reaching a crescendo, until suddenly, kook, a wet, rasping gasp ripped through the cavern. Everyone froze and turned to where Alexia was lying on the ground. The blind girl lurched upright with a violent jerk, coughing and clawing at her chest. Her glassy eyes darted wildly in panic. Young mistress. Kang's mask of boredom shattered instantly. He was at her side before anyone else could blink, cradling her shoulders like she was made of glass. His voice cracked with raw fear. Hey, are you all right? Talk to me. The tough, silent young man now sounded more like a frightened puppy. Michael scrambled to her other side. Lily followed behind him, bringing out a healing vial that was not even needed. Alexia blinked rapidly, disoriented. Then, she summoned her origin card. It shimmered into existence before her, letting Alexia see the glow of our auras and make out the general outline of her immediate surroundings. Soon, her breathing steadied as her bearings settled. Then she froze, realizing how many people were crowding her. Oh, she rasped, voice hoarse but leveling out. Wow, okay, I'm awake, I'm awake. She flung out her arms, nearly smacking Kong in the face. What happened? Did someone kiss me? Please tell me no one kissed me. The cavern went dead silent for the second time that night. Chapter 258, Temple of First Rebellion I. We resumed our descent after a few hours, leaving behind us the cavern I'd already grown strangely attached to. The vines and protruding rocks stretched endlessly below, and the jungle mist clung to our clothes. Alexia, fully recovered from her long nap, insisted on being thoroughly updated. Which meant that for the last half hour, we'd been stuck recounting everything that had transpired while she was unconscious. So let me get this straight, she said, one hand trailing along the cliff wall as Kong guided her by the elbow. After I was knocked out cold by that overgrown salad. The Tree King, Lily corrected gently. The overgrown salad, Alexia repeated, unbothered. You three, she gestured toward me, Michael, and Lily, played the heroic rescue party. More or less, Michael shrugged. Lord Samael, Alexia drawled, her blind eyes narrowing in my general direction, were you the leader of this rescue? I was the strategist, Lady Alexia, I said smoothly. Lily coughed. Yes, a strategist who literally jumped into that battle without a strategy. I flicked an annoyed glance at her. Excuse me, Lily, but improvisation is simply a strategy executed faster than your brain can process. Ray whistled. Burn, he called you slow. Vince squinted, looking so utterly baffled that he was left speechless for a second. That's not at all what improvisation is though. And these are the two buffoons that joined you after the fight? Alexia asked, tilting her head toward the voices of Ray and Vince. Excuse you, Ray's offended voice echoed up the cliffside. He was dangling from an overhang, trying to vlog himself mid-climb with his drone hovering beside him. I am not a buffoon. I am a dreamer, an influencer, a beacon of light in this abyss we call the world. Buffoon, Alexia repeated flatly. Vince puffed his chest. And I, Lady Zinx, am no buffoon either. I am a man of commerce. A facilitator of opportunity. His foot slipped on moss, and he screeched. Before catching himself, a professional, thank you very much. Alexia raised a brow. Professional at what? Quote. Allegedly many things, Vince muttered. Ray laughed so hard he nearly lost his grip. PFF'd. You sound guilty even when no one's accusing you. Michael sighed like a man seconds away from giving up on life. Anyway, they're our teammates now. Correction, I interjected. They are my underlings. Like you all are. That sparked another back and forth between all of us that spiraled so long I couldn't even remember half of it. Most of it was pointless. But I do remember Alexia falling quiet at one point, despondent over not being able to save the other cadets she had tried to rescue from the Tree King's clutches. She was, however, visibly relieved that at least Juliana had made it out safely. Juliana, of course, gave no acknowledgement. She just kept walking with the same detached grace as always, keeping her every movement neat and precise, as if she was above the struggle of mortals who sweat and slip. And after a while, Alexia finally arched her eyebrows at me. So what's your plan for getting us out of this jungle, strategist? I offered her a smile, which I remembered she couldn't see. We'll keep moving deeper into the forest while hoping nothing kills us. Then we'll set sail across the Lake of Grief. And reach my father's sanctuary. Once there, if his discarded undead horde doesn't kill us, we'll be safe. By now, we had reached the overhang from which Ray had climbed down. One by one, we began to descend from it as well. Standing behind me, Vince's ears perked like a startled rabbit. I'm sorry, did you say undead horde? As in zombies or something? Alexia ignored him and blinked in my direction. What an impeccable plan, Samael. Truly, you're a man of vision. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Hey, I smiled smugly. It was sarcasm, Michael pointed out flatly. I know, I scoffed. But it's fine, because true visionaries are never appreciated in their own time. They're mocked and doubted and belittled by lesser minds. Only later, after the dust settles, after history carves their names into monuments, does the world finally recognize their genius. Michael opened his mouth as if to argue, paused for several long seconds, then shut it again, perhaps finally acknowledging my greatness. Alexia rubbed her face. Okay, but jokes aside, is this place truly the Noctvale Wilds? I've read a bit about it online, and this, she gestured vaguely at our surroundings, doesn't seem anything like it. I wanted to point out how she could have read about it, and how exactly this place could seem anything to her, but I didn't. Out of the sheer kindness of my heart, I didn't. And people say I'm not considerate. Michael joined in, looking at me. Actually, I've been wondering the same thing ever since you told me where we were. I wanted to ask last night, but you went to sleep. To be clear, there was always night here. The blood-red moon was always at the zenith of the cracked sky. It never set, but we had decided to measure time by our own clocks, otherwise half of us would have lost our minds already. So the last night he was referring to was just 13 hours ago. Michael continued, from what I've read as well, Noctvale Wilds is classified as a death zone. And death zones in the spirit realm are defined as territories overrun by beasts so powerful that only S-rank hunters or higher can survive in them. Exactly, Alexia nodded. So how are we not already dead? Vince's voice cracked as he walked up next to me. No, hold on. Can we first go back to the zombies for a second? Because if there are going to be zombies where we're headed, I think I'll just stay here. Yes, right here. This rock and I are going to be best friends. I shrugged without looking back at Michael or Alexia before answering them. You're both kind of right. This is definitely Noctvale Wilds. But it's different from any other death zone you may have heard of. The strongest beasts here cap around greater, with only a handful of ancient and above. Even with 2 B rankers in our party, survival would be difficult, but our odds of making it out of here alive are still far better than in any other death zone. A contemplative silence fell over the group for a minute or two. Then Michael frowned thoughtfully. Wait, the strongest beasts here are only greater. With a few ancient and above, you say. But that doesn't make sense. If that's true, then this place shouldn't even qualify as a death zone. Yeah, Alexia chimed in, just as confused. If that were the case, Duke Arthur would have conquered Noctvale Wilds years ago. I rolled my eyes. Contrary to what modern media has led you to believe, my father isn't all-powerful. He can be defeated. There are things, eldritch horrors, mythical abominations, that even he can't deal with. 2 of such beings are here in Noctvale Wilds. One is an unholy and the other is a demonic great spirit. Alexia's blind eyes widened so sharply it was almost comical. And it wasn't just her. Everyone, even Juliana and Kong, had their faces plastered with expressions ranging from somewhere between outright disbelief and reluctant horror. Okay, now I know you're screwing with me, Alexia laughed uneasily. An unholy spirit is one thing, but demonic grade. That's a myth, right? It's not even officially recognized on the ranking scale. The others nodded quickly, grasping onto that reasoning like it was a lifeline. Everyone but Michael. He stayed uncomfortably quiet, because he knew I wasn't joking. He had undeniable proof of demonic beings' existence. In fact, if I had to guess, one was whispering in his head at this very moment. Zaldrith, the 6th Demon Prince. You can believe me or not, I don't care, I said before turning toward Ray, who was still filming everything. But cut this part out of your vlog. A heavy silence once again fell over the group. Then Ray frowned, lowering his drone slightly. Of course I will, but, even if I believe you, it's hard to imagine Duke Arthur Kaiser Theosbane, the Dawn Scourge himself, ever losing. I mean, I'm not from the West, but even I know he's by far the greatest hunter ever lived. I nearly laughed out loud. What, are you a fanboy, Ray? I hate to break it to you, but my father just has a stellar PR team. You should know better than anyone how far good PR can stretch. Don't get me wrong, I agree with you. My father is absurdly strong. The greatest hunter to ever live. Sure, but like I said, he's not invincible. He, too, can be defeated. In fact, he had tried to conquer Noctvale Wilds before. Unknown to anyone but the monarchs, he had led 2 expeditions here. But both times, he and his army were defeated. And there had never been a 3rd attempt ever since. So what kind of creature could bring even someone as powerful as my father to his knees? An unholy abomination called the Reflection Beast. ... Yeah, I know, it's the most creative or terrifying name. But trust me, the Reflection Beast was the kind of nightmare that made even legends lose sleep. It was a creature made entirely of glass, sealed deep beneath the Noctvale Wilds, frozen in an endless slumber. But the moment it sensed a human soul that was A rank or above within its territory, it would wake up. And once awake, it would copy you. Not just your face or voice. It would copy everything. Your strength, your weapons, your instincts, your powers, even your soul, your entire existence reflected back at you. Then it would kill you wearing your face. And there was nothing you could do to stop it. If you cut it down, it would shatter like glass and regrow from the broken shards, multiplying in number. If you burned it, froze it, cursed it, it would adapt, mirror your attack, or just throw it right back at you twice as hard. That's why my father called it the perfect predator. It wasn't stronger than him. It wasn't smarter than him either. It didn't have to be. Because it was him, in an immortal body, with no limit to how many times it could multiply. That was why this jungle remained unconquered. The second anyone above B rank set foot here, the Reflection Beast rose to hunt them down. So Noctvale Wilds had become a prison. A prison for the Reflection Beast, and for the other demonic creature I'd mentioned earlier. Vagar the Moon Eater. Come to think of it, the geography of Noctvale Wilds was indeed perfectly suited to be a prison. The jagged peaks of the Crown of Thorns walled this region off from one side, and the savage depths of Lake of Grief surrounded it from the other, making it a perfect cage for horrors too dangerous to be allowed loose. So there was no way to get in and out of here. Unless you were weak enough not to wake up the Reflection Beast, strong enough to endure the uncountable threats of this forest, lucky enough not to meet something that could wipe you out in an instant, and just crazy enough to recklessly brave the unknown. Which, unfortunately, described all the main characters perfectly. Not me, of course. I was a peace-loving, refined, civilized young man who preferred old music, fine scotch, and long naps in silk sheets. Not dangling off a cliff while listening to Vince hyperventilate about zombies. I'm sorry, am I the only one who heard Samael say, undead horde? Vince cried out. Why the fuck is nobody talking about it? He didn't say a zombie or two. He said a horde, a whole ass horde. We kept climbing down. Vince kept panicking. Chapter 259, Temple of First Rebellion 2. It took us 8 more hours to climb down the escarpment and finally reach the jungle floor. 8 more hours. At least 9 in total. By the time my boots hit dirt again, I was ready to throw myself at the nearest spirit beast and beg it to end me. Unfortunately, today of all days, the universe decided to nearly grant my wish. Because the lower we descended and the closer we got to the floor, the more spirit beasts started spotting us and attacking. First, we were ambushed by killer bees. Those things were the size of small bikes, buzzing around with stingers as long as our bodies. One grazed past my shoulder and nearly skewered me like a kebab. Ray, naturally, screamed like a dying goat while filming the whole thing on his drone. Then a large swarm of human-headed cockroaches dug their way out of the cliff face and surrounded us. Each one was the size of a wagon and disgusting enough to make us retch. They screeched, spat bile, and had the nerve, the absolute nerve, to slam their ugly bodies into the cliff, knocking loose entire boulders that rained down on our heads from above. Vince almost threw up, not from the fight, but from looking at their faces too long. We barely survived that mess before the jungle decided it was time to introduce us to a giant snake with humanoid limbs. Yes, humanoid limbs. Gaunt arms and legs stuck out of its scaly torso, which the snake used to scuttle toward us like some grotesque spider as it hissed black venom. Michael, bless his heroic stupidity, charged it head on. He eventually brought the thing down with Alexia and my help, while the rest of the gang held back a small horde of gigantic mushroom monsters that flanked us during the fight. By the time it was all over, I swore I would never, ever complain about the Academy's curriculum again. Because at least that didn't involve being nearly stung, crushed, and eaten alive in the same hour. Anyway, it looked like we were safe for the time being. Everyone was alive and mostly unharmed, though some had sustained small injuries, and all of us were so exhausted that even breathing felt like a chore. So we moved in lethargic silence, wearily looking around for a relatively safe place to set up camp. But even now, there was one among us who somehow still had enough energy to just keep on yapping. It was, of course, Ray Warner. "Hello and welcome back to my channel, Radiance," he said far too cheerfully to his camera. "It has been 30 minutes since our fight with that snake, and according to my clock, we've now officially entered day 7. Yes, you heard it right, dudes and dudettes. Your boy has been stuck in this jungle for 7 days. He skipped to the front and panned the camera across our faces one by one. As you can see, my companion's morale is low. Or is it morales? Whatever. Grammar is for people with energy, and I'm currently running only on charisma." He shoved the drone closer to Vince's face. Vince swatted at it like it was a mosquito. "Get that thing away from me before I eat it." Ray gasped dramatically. "You wouldn't eat my drone. Not after everything we've been through together. Watch me. I'm so hungry right now I could chew plastic." Vince snarled, clutching his stomach. Then he frowned and pointed at his drone. "Wait, come to think of it, how has that thing not run out of battery already?" Ray shrugged. "Oh, it did. I just charged it." I wasn't paying much mind to their babblings, but when Ray said that, my attention spiked. I stopped, blinked, and slowly turned to face him. And so did everyone else. He blinked back at us, confused. "Ah, what, how the hell did you charge it?" Michael asked. "Power bank, duh," Ray replied matter-of-factly, pointing to a satchel on the utility belt of his uniform. "This little thing right here is a storage artifact. It can hold as many things as it takes to fill up a small backpack. And I've stuffed it with all my camera equipment and power banks." Silence. Absolute silence. Then Vince exploded. "Are you kidding me? You've been carrying camera equipment in a storage artifact instead of, I don't know, food." Correction. Ray raised a finger like a smug professor. "Camera equipment and power banks. What part of that makes it better?" Vince barked, clutching his head. "Storage artifacts are supposed to carry emergency supplies. Rations. Medical kits. Not," he jabbed a finger at Ray's drone, "whatever vlogging nightmare that thing is." Ray gasped dramatically. "Excuse you, my Radiants are not a nightmare. They're family." "Oh yeah," Vince snapped. "Can they feed us when we're starving?" "Yes," Ray said confidently. "With likes and emotional support." Michael, ever the peacekeeper, held up a hand. All right, calm down. Instead of fighting, we should." A loud crunch cut him off. Everyone froze. Slowly, they all turned, this time to look at me. I was leaning against a mossy tree, casually munching from a bag of butter popcorn, one hand wrapped around an ice-cold can of energy drink wet with condensation. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Vince erupted again. "Are you shitting me right now? You had food all this time? Actual food?" Ray clutched his chest. Bro, where did you even get popcorn?" Lily blinked rapidly. "Why didn't you tell us you had rations?" I calmly popped another fluffy kernel into my mouth and chewed. "You didn't ask." Vince staggered like the words physically hit him. "Wah, ask. I'm sorry. Who the hell asks someone? Oh, by the way, are you secretly hoarding snacks while we starve?" Michael pinched the bridge of his nose. "Samael, just share it." I tilted my head. "Why should I? What do I get out of it?" Vince's jaw dropped in disbelief. "Why? Because we are dying. Do you want something in return for saving your fellow cadets?" And here I thought I was the most selfish bastard I knew. I smirked. "Never assume you're the best at anything." "Oh, you smug piece of." Vince was halfway through raising his middle finger when Michael groaned and cut in. "Samael, stop antagonizing him. And please share the food," he said. I rolled my eyes like a martyr being asked to sacrifice everything. Then I reached into the inner pocket of my robe and flicked out cans of soda, bottled water, and sealed snack packets from its dimensional storage, scattering the items across the floor like treasure. The group lunged at them. Even Juliana snagged a bottle of water with a casual flick. Only Kong didn't take anything. Instead, he went to scout the perimeter. Within seconds, wrappers tore, caps twisted, and the sound of desperate chewing filled the air. Ray wiped crumbs off his chin. "So, what else you got in there?" I sipped my drink, unbothered. "Nothing much edible. A few more packets, some water. The rest's just clothes and essence stones." Vince froze mid-bite and glared at me. Then he buried his face in his hands and groaned. "Why," he muttered, "why are all rich people so stupid?" I scowled. Excuse me. No, no, I won't excuse you. He barked like I'd personally wronged his entire bloodline, then pointed between me, Ray, and Alexia. Storage artifacts were invented to carry emergency items. They're rare, but they're not luxury. They're not so that you nobles don't have to commit the arduous labor of carrying your own luggage. Ray tapped his shoulders. Whoa, buddy, calm down. Who hurt you? No, shut up. Listen to me. Vince flung his hands up. The three of you packed designer clothes, camera equipment, and fancy tents. Which one of those screams, life or death emergency? To you, Alexia raised her hand sheepishly. Tents are considered survival gear. Vince made a strangled noise, somewhere between a scream and a sob. You can live without tents. A simple tarp and cords are enough. You can't live without food and water. Well, sorry for being accustomed to the luxury we were born into, I snickered. Arg, Vince physically pounced on me like a rabid dog. Michael had to wrestle him back down. My goodness, Lily muttered. He's livid. I'm livid at the heavens for not making me born a noble. If I was born into money, I'd have filled my storage artifact with practical things. Canned beans, water filters, rope. Do you know how useful a good rope is? Vince ranted, his voice breaking as Michael struggled to hold him back. But no, you brats pack expensive jackets and snack food. Ray grinned. You forgot my tripod. Oh my god, shut up. Vince howled, thrashing in Michael's grip. You don't deserve that storage space. You should have been forced to carry your crap in your teeth. Alexia scoffed smugly. You sound jealous. Vince froze, then pointed at her with a shaky hand. Jealous, jealous. Of course I'm jealous. Do you know what I'd give for a storage artifact? I've tried to find one, I've tried to smuggle one, but I'm always either short on money or my sources fail me. His eyes welled, with actual frustrated tears. When I was little, I had to hide loaves of bread in dead rats just so bigger kids wouldn't steal them from me. Ray recoiled. Quote. Dude, what? Vince shouted. That's disgusting. It was survival. You don't know hunger until you've gnawed breadcrumbs out of a rat's ribcage. Lily blinked, disturbed but fascinated. Wait, did you actually eat the rat, or just use it as a container? Does it matter? Vince shrieked. Yes, Ray and Lily said in unison. Juliana, sitting cross-legged a little distance away with her bottle of water, finally chimed in. Her voice was cold and flat. He ate the rat. Everyone turned to look at her. What? No, I didn't. Vince yelled, indignant. Why would you just assume that? Juliana unscrewed her bottle without looking up. You've got the face of a rat eater. Ray lost it, choking on his soda and coughing violently. Oh my god, rat eater. I'm clipping that. The sound of his drone whirring back online made Vince snap his head around. Wait, you're recording? Vince lunged for the camera, but Ray held it high. Oh yes, Ray grinned. This is gold, you son of a... Vince flailed wildly, missing the drone by inches. Delete that or I swear all. Thankfully, before they could continue their catfight, Kong walked back in. You guys, he said. I've found something I think you should all see. Chapter 260, Temple of First Rebellion 3. Wow, this was not what I was expecting, Michael said, astounded. Really? I feigned surprise. You mean you weren't expecting an ancient temple in the middle of a nightmarish jungle? He rolled his eyes at me. We had followed Kong to the spot where he'd found something he thought we should check out. What we came across was the ruins of a massive temple jutting out of the jungle. And let me tell you, in a place where nature had gone wild, something man-made like this looked ridiculously out of place. Vines clung to weathered stone, thick roots had split once grand columns, and giant petals drooped from nearby flowers that smelled far too sweet. I had a very bad feeling about this. So, should we go in? Michael asked. Did your mother give you some shady medicine when you were little, Michael? I scowled, because I refused to believe you were born this stupid. What? He shot back, offended. What do you mean, what? I snapped. It's an ancient temple in the middle of a nightmarish jungle. Why the fuck would you want to go in? Okay, 2 reasons, he said, raising a finger. First, don't you want to explore and see what's up with it? Nope, I cut him off. And second, he went on, undeterred, everyone's exhausted. Keeping watch in our state would be dangerous. It'd be smarter to not camp out in the open if we can avoid it. So I say it's a divine blessing we came across a temple. I groaned, but as much as I wanted to smack him for uttering the words, divine blessing, I couldn't argue with his logic. We were all tired, and it would be safer to avoid sleeping under the open sky tonight. But, What if there's something dangerous inside? I tried one last counter. Michael began summoning a card. Then we scout it first. I've already secured the perimeter, Kong chimed in, addressing Michael without even glancing at me. Good, Michael said as the card finished materializing above his head. His eyes lit up instantly. And I don't see any living thing inside with my X-ray vision. I can't see anything either, Alexia added. Both Juliana and I turned to her, deadpan and not at all amused. She probably felt the weight of our combined disappointment and let out a hearty laugh. I mean, I can't detect anyone's aura inside. Ray glanced between us, puzzled. Then, as if realization finally struck, he clapped once. Oh, I get the joke. Her seeing didn't make sense because she's blind. I resisted the urge to facepalm. This guy was never beating the himbo allegations. Anyway, Ray continued, I also think we should go in. Remember, there isn't much information about the Noctvale Wilds because it's largely unexplored. We could very well be the first to document something worthwhile here. Hey, I can already imagine the number of views I'll get. Ah, yes, I grumbled. Because clout is obviously more important than survival. Exactly, Ray nodded, somehow missing the sarcasm entirely. Vince muttered, I don't care if we go inside, but I swear I'll lose it if one of you says, let's split up and explore. Relax, Michael said. Draw your weapons, everyone. Alexia and I will take the lead. Since most of you have drained too much essence already, don't use your origin cards. If we need to fight, Samael and I will engage. It made sense. Out of all of us, only Michael and I were B rankers, which meant we should have had far more essence to spare than the rest, at least in theory. In reality, most of my essence reserve was already drained. I had just enough left for a few small transmutations, nothing more. Even so, I was still in better shape physically than anyone else in the party, except Michael, of course. So, yes, it made sense that he and I would be the ones to engage any threat. Everyone did as they were told and brought out their armaments. Everyone except me. I remained standing there nonchalantly. Michael turned toward me. What are you doing? I said, draw your weapon. Don't worry about me, buddy. I gave him a sidelong smirk and tapped both my arms. I've got 2 guns right here. Michael gave me the look of a man who was too tired to argue but also too stubborn to let idiocy slide. Please, please draw your weapon. Wow, he was actually begging. I sighed, rolling my eyes. Okay, well, I don't have a weapon. Michael blinked. The hell do you mean you don't have a weapon? What happened to that shiny sword of yours? I shrugged helplessly. It got left behind. I can feel it coming to me as fast as it can, but it'll take a few weeks. Michael blinked again, slowly this time. Then he dragged a hand down his face and pulled a card from a holder on his utility belt. You could have just said that, he muttered, handing the card to me. I raised an eyebrow. What's this? An item card, Michael said flatly. Oh, thank you, Professor Obvious. But why give it to me? Because, Michael sighed, you're not walking into an unknown temple in the middle of a cursed jungle without something to defend yourself with. I hesitated for a long moment, then reluctantly took the card, frowning at the glyph engraved into its surface. Equip it, he said. So I did. The card dissolved into myriad motes of light that flooded into my body, absorbed straight into my soul. When I summoned it back, the motes of light gushed back out, converging above my head before solidifying into a rectangular card. At the same time, a weapon flashed into existence in my hand. It was an axe. A heavy, double-bladed axe which looked less like it had been forged and more like it had been carved straight from ashen volcanic stone. Glowing orange cracks ran through its blackened form like pulsing veins of magma. The edges flared, both sharp enough to cut through boulders and hot enough to melt steel. The haft was long, ending in a pommel shaped like a sealed ember. I couldn't help but admire it in silence. The whole thing was just so beautiful, savage and barbaric, but beautiful all the same. Then I quickly summoned my appraisal card, Identity, to check its rank and enchantments. Name, Scorched Oath. Rank, Rare P. Type, Armament. Description: a lonely weaponsmith, bereft of everything he loved, faced the merciless sun with unyielding resolve. Where others broke down in despair beneath the cruel gaze of a godless sky, he crafted his weapons and carved through every obstacle fate placed before him. Finally, he stood tall before the sun itself and made an oath: I will burn you. I will burn you down. Enchantments. 1. Vow of Cinders. When you strike an enemy you've sworn to kill, flames ignite along the blades, dealing burning damage over time. The hotter your resolve, the stronger the blaze. 2. Ashen reprisal. If you're struck, the axe stores a fraction of that pain as searing heat, releasing it on your next swing in an explosive flare. Equals. Whoa, this is a strong weapon, I said, eyes widening. You sure you want to hand it over? Because I will not give it back. It's fine, Michael simply waved a hand. I only use swords anyway. I see. I twirled the axe in my grip, sizing its weight. So where'd you get it? It was a drop from one of the soulwraiths I killed, he replied casually, already moving into formation. And I was left standing there with my mouth agape. This bastard. This God-loved, heaven's favorite, protagonist bastard. I wanted to strangle him. Like I'd once mentioned before, natural acquired cards were rare. You had to kill hundreds of beasts just to hope for one. For the record, I still hadn't received a single card from any of my kills. That's how rare they were. But rarer still among those natural acquired cards were item cards. You'd almost never hear someone receiving a weapon from their kill. So I had no doubt a card like this would sell for millions of credits. And this bastard just got one handed to him by fate. Come to think of it, even in the game he always pulled more natural cards than most. And not just him, it was the same for other heroes too. Tisk. My frustration boiled over. I guessed no matter what you do, you can't match a main character's luck after all.